So we've just tested a sample mean against a population mean. Now what we want to do is be able to test a sample mean against another sample mean. So the way we want to think about this is I want to answer the question, on average, do men have more years of education than women? So I'm going to set this up with a null hypothesis that the education of men is equal to the education of women. That becomes my population parameter. And the alternative is that education of men is not equal to education of women. So to create my t-stat, I now have not just the one mean, but I have the difference in means. My population parameters are equal to each other, so therefore the difference is equal to 0. Now the denominator has a standard error of education of men minus education of women. That's harder to compute by hand in Excel. If you go back to your stats class, you'll see that that's the standard error of education for men minus the standard error of education for women, with also a term in there for the covariance between the two. So we're not getting that into this class, but Excel has a built-in t-test that allows us to test two sample means. So this is what we're trying to do now. So to do that, I'm first going to go into my data, and I'm going to filter my data and sort the gender. So we have all of the females, whoops, all right, until observation 275, and then now we have all of our males. So now we have our data sorted. What I can do is come to data analysis and come look at a t-test, a two sample, and we want to assume unequal variances because the variance for education for men is going to be different than education of women. So that's the generic one we're going to focus on. I click OK. Now I need to do my variable range of my first variable. So I'm going to look at education. So I'm going to start at B2, and I'm going to go down to, if I remember, it was 275. So I can keep going down, or I can just come in here and insert that by hand. 275. Now that's the average. That's going to be the range of education for men. The range for education for women is going to start at B276 and go to the end, which was B278. I click OK, and here is what Excel will give me. Let's expand this out. So it'll tell me my average education for men, for variable 1, which was men, is 12.78. For women is 12.33. The t-statistic is 1.969. So at the alpha of 5%, a two-tailed test, this number barely falls to the right of 1.96, meaning that I reject the null. The null is that the education of men is equal to the education of women. So I reject that and say it's different, meaning that on average, men get slightly more years of education than women. And that's how I can come up with this with my t-statistic. Right? Now it'll also give us, in a sense, the t-statistic of a one-tail and two-tail. We don't need to focus on that. It's just that t-statistic, and then by hand we can compare it to the 1.96, which is the number we're focused on. So here we would conclude that men have more years of education than women by doing a t-test between sample means.